Well, good evening, everyone. For if you're wondering, those are a couple of pharaohs up there on the slides. Already had a couple questions here. Tonight we're talking about the 10 plagues, and we're not going to get them through all of them tonight. We're only going to try to cover the first 5 tonight, because what we're doing is I'm intermixing in with the plagues of the time, the top 10 things in the United States that interfere with our relationship with God. Now, just to begin with, some stuff going on here. The reason I'm doing that, their gods were things they relied on to take care of things for them. They had a god of the Nile. They had a god of fertility. They had a god for just about everything. And basically, when the 10 plagues happened, God went through going, I'm stronger than that God. I'm the one God. They're nothing. He was, okay, in some ways, he wasn't attacking the people. He was attacking their belief in their gods and showing them that their gods were not gods, is what he was doing. Just, a little bit of historical background here. Those somewhere between 1 million and 2 million Israelites were slaves in Egypt. Moses was an Israelite. Y'all know that. He'd left and he ran away and came back. Most of y'all know the stories, the events that happened. Of course, Moses confronted Pharaoh. Pharaoh's like, nah, I don't think so. We're not letting the slaves go. And again, all of these plagues were signs to prove that God was bigger than their gods. Today, we may not have what we refer to as gods, but the truth of the fact is we have things we rely on or interfere with our relationship with God or get in the way, quite frankly, of us living a Christian life. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take... Now, there's a difference in the order here. The 10 plagues started out small and got bigger. Now, the top 10 I'm starting at the smallest one and getting bigger. So both of them are getting bigger. So just FYI. As an example, the 10th plague, where the firstborn died, will be paired with the number one thing in the United States that interferes with our relationship with Jesus Christ. So that's how I'm pairing them together. Now we know there is... God hardened Pharaoh's heart. God hardened Pharaoh's heart. It says it. So he would not let them go. Why? Why would he do that? Why would Pharaoh harden? Why would God harden Pharaoh's heart? Well, first of all, God's all-knowing. He's knowing what he's doing. He did it for a very good reason. Keep in mind, after the 10 plagues, after they all had left, Pharaoh still went and tried to get them back. So after everything he had seen, he still went and tried to get them back. Now there are some people that like to say, well, if God wouldn't have hardened Pharaoh's heart, none of this would have been necessary. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. We know, after all, even after all of it, he tried to go and get all the slaves back. Think about it. Think about it, if you will, for a little bit. God knew the proper way to handle all of this. And it wasn't just, I make the statement that it wasn't just getting the Israelites out of Egypt. It was also trying to teach the Israelites who he was. Because number one, they knew who all the different gods were of Egypt. He wasn't just showing the Egyptians, he was showing the Israelites as well. They were headed off to the promised land, right? We know what happened there. All but 2 of the spies went, man, we can't do it. Even after seeing everything God had done for them. The Israelites weren't ready to leave Egypt when the plague started. Now, they certainly had some more, I guess we'd say better feeling about it, more confidence in being able to leave after the plagues. But it didn't take long. They were already whining and wanting to go back because they couldn't have their cucumbers. And they're good food to eat. Well, it's true. Let's be honest. So, a couple other things. How many people know the time elapsed between the plagues? Yeah, we don't know either. There is some variety. Now, if you look at the Mishnah, which is Jewish text, they said it took about a year for all of the 10 plagues to happen, and for them, from the point Moses came and said, "Let my people go," to the point where he let them go. The Mishnah says about 12 months. Now we know some of them took longer, some of them took shorter time periods. But the first and second plagues had a 7-day gap. We do know that. But some had different durations, such as the plague of darkness, which lasted 3 days. So some of the plagues, they may have lasted longer or shorter, and there may have been different amounts of time. But the overall time period is believed to be roughly a year. Now, we have one overarching Bible verse we need to keep in mind when we're looking at all of this. The overall arching verse that we should keep in mind when we're talking about these plagues and everything going on is Matthew 6:24. And you think, Matthew? Something out of Matthew? Let me read that verse. Matthew 6:24 tells us, "No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and," in this text, money. Which is, as all of you would guess, one of the top 10 things that stand between most people and God. So we need to remember, especially as I'm going over the top 10 things that stand in the way of Christians in the United States today and their relationship with Jesus Christ, we have to remember this passage. If something's standing in our way, we're serving another master. And that's why we're looking at these things in conjunction. And you stop and think about it. I wonder how many of the Israelites also on the side kind of worship these other Egyptian gods. I guarantee you some of them did. But also, I didn't say it before, and I guess y'all know this, but God was also showing the Egyptians exactly who he was. And I believe most of y'all know that there were Egyptians that left with the Israelites. That's a key point there as well. So, plague number 1. What was the first plague? The first plague was covered in Exodus 7:14 through 25. And that's where Moses turns water to blood, specifically the Nile water. Now, there are 2 revered Egyptian gods, basically, that God said, no. were kind of basically proving they really couldn't do much, that were basically put aside when Moses turned the water to blood. And it was the god Khnum and Hapi. Now this is an image of the god Khnum. He was held responsible for regulating the annual inundation of the river, basically the annual flooding coming in. And it emulated, now the water supposedly came from the caverns of Hapi, and that's the other god, the deity embodying the flood. Now you have to keep in mind, that's Hapi there. Now keep in mind how important the floods were. Who has seen pictures of the pyramids? It's not a big fertile land, it's a bunch of sand. And without the flooding of the Nile, without the Nile there, without the nutrients brought in by the Nile, they'd starve to death, quite frankly. Their crops, everything would fail. And the first thing that Moses did was turn the Nile to blood. That was a direct assault against the gods of Egypt, of Khnum and Hapi. So, let's see here. Hapi, in addition, Hapi was also the god of and master of fish and birds, and the maker of barley and wheat, and the master of the river, because of the good that the flood brought to all Egypt. So if they're over, this is the Egyptian gods, they're over the Nile. But it didn't work, did it? And when we stop and think about this being the first one, and the least of them, the smallest impact, they've got a lot ahead of them. So, what am I going to compare that with in the United States today? Well, starting with number 10 on the list of things that interfere with our relationship with God today. Remember, I'm not comparing the plague to the interference. They're just 10 and 10. So the number 10 thing that interferes with our relationship with God today in the United States is seeking relationships and seeking significance in others. Okay, so what do you kind of mean by that? It's good for us to have healthy relationships with other people. It is. We have healthy relationships here. I would say everybody here currently, we have a healthy relationship with one another. There is nothing wrong with seeking happiness, meaning, and identity, but there is something wrong with seeking importance and happiness, meaning, and identity solely in relationship with others. If we become dependent on other people instead of God, there's a problem. Who here has heard the statement, people are going to fail you? People are going to fail you. God's not going to fail you. He's the only one that's not going to fail you. And people, quite frankly, there are people that being popular is very, very important to them. Is more important than having a relationship with God. Sadly, there are people that will not have a relationship with God or won't become a Christian or won't believe because they think some of their friends will not be their friend anymore. Or their social standing will be impacted because of that. Few verses to go along with this. Galatians 1:10 says, "And am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ." Proverbs 29:25. Fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. John 12:42 through 43 says, Yet at the same time, many, even among the leaders, believed in him. Boy, what a sad statement. Listen to this. Yet at the same time, many, even among the leaders, believed in him. But because of the Pharisees, they would not openly acknowledge their faith for fear that they would be put out of the synagogue. For they loved human praise more than praise from God. Think about it. That happens today. I mean, sadly, there are some people that go to church to be seen. So, that they will have people supporting them or whatever. But there are people that don't go to church because they're afraid to be seen. Because some of their quote-unquote friends may not be their friends anymore. Okay, let's move on because we've got about 14 minutes. I'd like to get through the first 5 plagues tonight. All right, the second plague that came along was amphibians. So you can say frogs, but it's a water creature. That is covered in Exodus 7:26 through 8:14. Obviously, I'm not reading the text for each individual plague. If we were to do that, it would take me a month to get all through this. And I know all of us are fairly familiar with those. Now, who was that fashioned towards? Well, take a look at the next Egyptian god, if Karen's got it to punch up there. That is Ket. Notice he looks like a frog there, doesn't she? Or he, I'm not sure. But by bringing an uncontrollable plague of frogs, the God of Israel was delivering a direct strike against the Egyptian god Heket, representing regeneration, rebirth, fertility. Heket was depicted as a frog-headed woman, as a fertility goddess associated explicitly with the staging. Notice this, as a fertility goddess associated explicitly with the last stages of the flooding of the Nile, and so with the germination of corn. It's all tied together again with the Nile, tied together again with that flooding, tied together again. Who here knows that it's actually, this happens, there are frogs that will lay dormant in mud or the ground until it floods and comes out. You can look it up on eBay. They've got pictures of them. This looks like it's desert, then floods, and next thing you know, here comes a frog. Well, that's one thing. Obviously, why it was probably associated with the flooding stages of the Nile. But the problem was now they've got too many to deal with. Now, if they were Cajun, they probably would have been okay and would have had a lot of frog legs. Now, hey, I like frog legs personally. I don't know if y'all have ever tried them, but, fried frog legs pretty good. Hey. But anyway, that's a little side funny there. But, okay, so he brings them, overruns them with frogs. And you think, but yet again, there's another god associated with a frog. And now they've got a problem with frogs. Okay, let's compare that with the 9th thing on the list of things that interfere with relationships people have with God in the United States. The 9th thing, believe it or not, is, and this was from years of research, by the way, is political or social causes. And you think, oh, Tim, shouldn't we be involved with political or social causes? To an extent, the Bible doesn't directly condemn involvement in social or political causes, but we've got to have a balance. We have to have a balanced perspective and avoid obsessive or unhealthy fixations. As many of you know today that are probably watching this online, a person assassinated Charlie Kirk earlier today because he was a Christian and he would debate people on Christian values and all of the social ills of today. That's definitely what I would call somebody that is not balanced, talking about the person that carried out the assassination. But you know, you'd see it all the time on his videos. There was a guy not too long ago that literally wanted to attack him, literally wanted to fight him, and Charlie Kirk's sitting there just talking to him using logic. And the guy is so obsessed with his beliefs. That's what I mean. People can become so obsessed with beliefs that are not biblical that it can become a problem, if you think about it. There are sadly, let's name a few. How about that? Let's name a few. What about pets? You ever heard people referring to their pets as their children? You ever heard of people not caring about abortion or sex trafficking or whatever? But buddy, you touch a pet and you actually can get more time in jail for beating a pet than you can a child, which is sad. There's a lot of unbalance. This is what I'm talking about, balance. We need to be not obsessed. We can have a social or political cause, but we need to not let it interfere with our relationship with Jesus Christ. Again, all of this is about things that interfere with our relationship with God. So, now, Matthew 33:34, some scripture to back that up. Basically, this verse highlights the importance of making God's kingdom and righteousness the center focus. And it states, Matthew 33:34 states, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Of course, people were worried about clothing and worried about food and all this sort of stuff. And they're being told here, stay focused on God, and everything else will take care of itself. And there certainly are people today that lose that focus. Colossians 3:2 says, "Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things." Romans 13:1-7, in addition, says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves." Tim, why do you have that one up there? It's talking about, government and stuff. Well, how many people are obsessed with government? Think about it. Y'all have heard me say, go and vote. Don't worry about what someone else is voting for. Just go and vote who you want to vote for, and then let it be. Because God's got it under control no matter what. God's not counting on your vote for this person to be elected. It's just not. But there's been people that got quite mad at me for saying that. But it's true. If we let politics come in between, if we let politics impact the love we have for brothers and sisters in Christ, that's wrong. If we let politics impact the love we have for people that are not Christians, that's wrong. We're supposed to, we are called to be a light in this world. Not a black light. Not a dark actions, talking about being mean or stuff like that. We're called to bring others to Christ. And we can't do that if we're not acting appropriately. Next, plague number 3 comes from Exodus 8, 12 through 15. Gnats, lice. There's some debate. Was it lice or was it gnats or both? Or was there some sort of flying lice? Or, in other words, little insects. Little insects. None of them are. Who here knows how to blow gnats? Well, if you've lived far enough south, you have to learn how to blow gnats. And what I'm talking about is you have gnats flying all around. You occasionally go and blow up out of your mouth, and it'll get the gnats away from your eyes and things. They can become very annoying. Now that one, who is he addressing, and why is he addressing this? Well, the god of Egypt, Jeb, some say Seb or Keb, was considered a god of the earth. The earth itself was seen as his house. But we also know that how these gnats came about, Moses struck the ground with his rod, his staff, and the gnats came out of the ground and came from the ground. So, okay, couple of things. Number one, wait a minute, let's back up here. Why couldn't Jeb prevent this if he was the god of the earth? Why did they come from there? Two, can you imagine the discomfort that was put upon the Egyptians with this plague? Again, God was showing his sovereignty. Y'all know the word I'm trying to say there, sovereignty. Yeah. Over the earth. He was saying, look, I'm in control of the earth. Not this guy or this God that y'all are worshiping here. And God proved this by bringing the plague from the earth. Okay. What's the counterpoint to this plague? What is the 8th thing on the list? I can just say, who was it that did the Letterman, the top 10, the number 8 plague. The number 8 item that stands in the way of Americans and God. I honestly thought this one would be a little higher, but wasn't as quite as high as I thought. But the number 8 thing is careers and success. Now, career success can be fulfilling. However, when we allow it to become the sole focus and defining factor of one's identity, can be problematic. It comes back to balance, what I was talking about just a minute ago. I've been guilty of it. How many times have somebody said, hey, you meet somebody, what do? They ask, what do you do for a living? And they're sizing you up. They're okay, where's this guy in the socio-economical class or so forth? We hear it and see it every day. And sometimes it is that, not necessarily. There are people that come and visit here, and just in the course of a conversation, I'm like, what do you do for a living? I was an engineer. But there are really people that their identity is based in their job. And for Christians especially, our identity should not be based on anything other than being a Christian, because that is who we are and who we are called to be. Who here has ever known anybody that their job was everything? Yeah. I've known quite a few of them that, hey, they were this, that, or the other. And, well, I work for so-and-so, or I do so-and-so. But we should be Christians first. We should be Christians first. We can spend far too much time in our jobs. And that is taking time directly away from us and our relationship with God, our relationship with our brothers and sisters in Christ, our relationships with our family. I talked just a minute ago, we read Matthew 6:33. In the beginning, we read Matthew 6:24, that, emphasizing seeking God's kingdom first. And quite frankly, the impossibility of serving both God and other things. Money is what was used in that verse, but popularity could be in a number of different things. We've been warned about the love of money. Y'all, all know that verse. 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Again, the love of, not having it, but if that's your focus, it says there, some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Ecclesiastes 10 tells us, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. Yeah, it sounds, for those of us, well, there may be somebody here that, I don't know, but those of us that, are normal, everyday, middle-class folks that, just can't go buy anything they want anytime they want, that just seems crazy. How could somebody, if they got all the money in the world, not be the happiest people in the world, but yet we see it all the time? How many, how sad it was Robin Williams took his own life. How many millions of dollars he had. Think about, many others that are just miserable people, even though they're rich. There's a whole thing online you can go and read of people that have won the lottery and they say, I wish I would have never won it. I was much happier before. It's a fact. Sometimes those things do happen. In 1 Timothy 6-8, it encourages commitment to God's provision rather than pursuit of material gain. It says, but godliness with content is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Truthfully, I think it should say, but if we have food and clothing, we should be content with that. But truthfully, a lot of times, people are not. They see the Joneses. They see what's going on in the world. We have Philippians 4:11 of Paul talking, of course, it says, I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. That's the key point there. Paul had learned, he was in jail, he had learned to be content no matter what was going on because he was focused on God and getting to heaven. And he goes on to say, I know what it is to be in need and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And it says, I can do all things through him who give me strength. Paul's talking about getting through situations. He's not talking about winning football games. You've seen the guys that have the eye black on the big football team, and they've got Philippians 4:13, I can do all things. He's not talking about going and lifting 1,000 pounds. He's talking about getting through difficulties in life. Got several others here, but I'm going to try to wrap up real quick. Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work Work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. You know? How many times have I said, we need to stay focused on the long game, getting to heaven. That's what we need to stay focused on. And that can be difficult. Matthew 16:26, what good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? Proverbs 22:1, a good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than gold and silver. We're going to stop here because I've already gone over in time. So we'll pick up next week. One of the things we're going to see next week, we've seen here God impacting the things around the Egyptians. We're going to see a shift next week, as long as I get that far. And that shift is all of a sudden, he starts impacting their physical bodies. So there's a big change coming. But there's several more plagues beforehand. And, yes, okay. And we will continue on next week with Plague 4. Thank you for the time this evening. We're going to continue next week looking at the rest of the plagues and the quote-unquote Egyptian gods that God was saying, I'm bigger than them. I am the one true God. And then we're going to continue to contrast with that with things in the United States. We as United States citizens let interfere with our relationship with God. Thank you all and hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care, everyone.